Welcome to In Search for Wellness. Eden's Cellular Wellness Solution is presenting to you a story on carbohydrates. I have prepared a story about concerning our carbohydrates as food and how we can interact with the carbohydrates and develop a healthy carbohydrate culture. We have heard that in Kenya and also in Africa, carbohydrates form a very big portion of our diet. A lot of carbohydrates per year in tonnage or in kilogram is consumed in a country or even in individual families. And so we end up per year consuming a lot of carbohydrates, which is a very important constituent of our diet. We cannot say because carbohydrates makes me put on weight, I am not going to eat carbohydrates anymore. Carbohydrates is very important and needed in the cells for energy and also for growth. This slide presents an example of wholesome carbohydrates. Some carbohydrates that are consumed all over the world, and others are consumed regionally as they manifest or as they are produced by the plants for us in a wholesome state. And carbohydrates which are very good and provide good starches for our daily consumption. Here we have arrowroots. Arrowroots, as they are called, roots that grow deep in the soil. And the whole plant has to be uprooted to harvest an arrowroot. The starch in arrowroot is very, very, very good. It is very good because it is not broken down very easily. It is not digested quickly. It is not broken down quickly into glucose to shoot the blood sugar. And consumption of arrowroot as a starch source is good because it presents good sustenance of glucose in the blood. These are whole maize. Maize is greatly used in Africa and many other parts of the world for starches. Maize in his wholesome state and refined is also very good carbohydrate source because it provides, as a grain, it provides oils, it provides vitamins, it provides proteins, and it also has complex carbohydrates that break down very slowly. This is rice, consumed greatly in the world as a refined rice, but in essence, it's best to consume it unrefined. Potatoes, Irish potatoes are known. These are a type of legume. Legumes also provide starches, but they are greatly known for their protein content. Bananas are loved greatly all over the world in their ripe bananas because they provide glucose for immediate energy when they are ripened. But in other parts of the world, like in Kenya, we also bananas are used in their green states, green bananas. They are used as starch sources. Corn is used as a vegetable in very many parts of the world, but we know that corn also provides starches. It also provides wholesome starch. And corn, like in popcorn, it is popcorn is a very healthy snack. So here, this diagram, it shows us that it is telling us it's good to know our wholesome carbohydrates that support wellness. It is in fact very good to know how to choose our wholesome carbohydrates which will support wellness. In a modern life system where most of our starches is coming, we get most of our starches from the supermarket and most times in the refined states. It is important to know our wholesome carbohydrates so that we can be able to make the correct selection. Eating Cellular Wellness Solutions has prepared for us the carbohydrate story. The carbohydrate story looks at our carbohydrate as an important part of our food so that we may find some reasons and some directions which will help us develop a healthy carbohydrate culture. Here, we are going to look at carbohydrates. We ask ourselves a question: where does my food come from? Where does my food come from? Carbohydrates, like we have seen, forms a very big portion of our diet. And in many circumstances, actually, carbohydrate portion forms a very big portion on our plate. Most of our carbohydrates, we buy them from the supermarket, most times in grains, refined grains, and refined flours. Fruits, we also buy them from the market, fresh produce market. And many times, children may grow only seeing food on a plate. Children may only grow seeing food served to them on a plate, but they may never know where does that food come from or what is that food. So where does my food come from? We are saying that carbohydrates belong to the class of food substances called nutrients. Carbohydrates are food substances. Food substances that we consume. Food substances are substances that we consume. We serve on a plate, like French beans, like corn, like arrowroot, like carrots, like grains of rice, biryani, pilau, or maize flour, like ugari or porridge. We serve for ourselves on a plate or in a bowl, and we eat. And these food substances goes right inside into our body, where it is broken down into smallest forms and sent into the cells as nutrients. Carbohydrates are biological chemicals. Biological chemicals. We know there are chemicals these days. There are so many chemicals in the world today. Many chemicals are factory synthesized. They are synthesized in a factory for spraying on our crops, for cleaning purposes, for polishing our furniture, and many other uses. There are many types of factory-made chemicals which are man-made, designed and man-made in the factory. But carbohydrates are biological chemicals made by the plants. For example, down here, you can see a plantation of bananas. This is a plantation of bananas. And these bananas are responsible for manufacturing the green bananas, which then ripen into yellow bananas and they become sweet. Down here are sweet potato veins that produce sweet potatoes. Here is a pawpaw tree. This is a pawpaw tree that produces the pawpaw fruits. These are Irish potatoes as they are being harvested from the soil made by this potato plant. So carbohydrates are food substances. They are biological chemicals that are made by plants for us. The carbohydrates are also needed by the human body cells for life sustenance and for growth. Carbohydrates, these food substances called carbohydrates, are needed in our body cells. And so that is why we eat. We swallow our food, it goes into the stomach and the digestive system. It is broken down into the smallest form, and it is taken by the blood into all the cells of the body. So carbohydrates are needed by the body cells for life sustenance and growth. And an example of plants that make our carbohydrates foods are wheat. The wheat plants, rice plants, the potatoes like we have seen here, sweet potato veins like these ones down here, cassava, and others. These are some of the plants that manufacture our carbohydrates. We are still looking at carbohydrates, the story of carbohydrates. Carbohydrates as a plant food and also as a nutrient which are required in the cells. We have seen in the last point there, in the last slide, that there are plants which make our carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are biological chemicals which are manufactured by the plants. And we have mentioned some plants that make carbohydrates. And these plants, we are saying they use solar energy. They use solar energy to combine carbon dioxide in the air with water from the soil to make the simplest blocks called glucose. So we are trying to look at the question, where does my food come from? Who makes my food? Is the food that was meant for me, is the food from the factory? Or where does my food come from? And we are saying that carbohydrates are made for us by the plants. And the plants have a special mechanism. Plants have a special mechanism where they use energy from the sun. They use energy from the sun. This is called solar energy. They use energy from the sun to combine carbon dioxide in the air and water from the soil. This is called a chemical reaction. This is a chemical reaction or a biological chemical reaction where carbon dioxide in the air, you can imagine your environment, there is a lot of carbon dioxide in the air, and in the soil where the plant is growing, there is a lot of water, especially when the rain falls. The soil obtains a lot of water. So the plant from its roots, it collects water from the soil and the water goes into the leaves, and using the solar power. You see, on daily basis, we use electrical energy. We always use electrical energy to light, to use our gadgets. or electronic gadgets use electrical energy. But the plants, they use solar energy from the sun, to join these two compounds together so that they can make glucose. And here I've given us a picture of glucose. We call it a glucose molecule, where many atoms of different substances, hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon, they are joined together to form a glucose molecule. This is the language of scientists. When I'm cooking in my kitchen, I look at an arrowroot and I look at the starch as food, but I don't address my arrowroot in its chemical formula. But as a scientist, I will look at the science, at the language of science. The language of science speaks to us and tells us that glucose has this picture. This is a photograph of a molecule of glucose. And what we are seeing is that when the plants combine carbon dioxide and water together, they form a molecule of glucose. Glucose is not very sweet. It's not very sweet as sucrose, the sugar which we buy in the market, but it fizzles out in the mouth very quickly and is absorbed very quickly. Glucose is used a lot for athletes to replenish their energy. So to make, this is a small block, the smallest block of starch. The smallest unit of starch is called glucose. And then the plant also has the capability to join such small blocks, glucose blocks. The plant also combines glucose blocks to make complex starches, which take longer to digest. For example, this is a picture of a starch, which has got one glucose, another glucose, another glucose, another glucose, and many glucose units joined together to form a very long starch molecule. The other one here we are seeing is called glycogen. It's a soluble starch which is found in the muscles, in the body and the liver, which is called glycogen. This is one glucose, one glucose, one glucose, one glucose, and then another branch is formed here of another glucose, another glucose. So this is the picture of glycogen. And so that is how the plant makes your carbohydrate, how the plant manufactures my food, my carbohydrate, my starch, by joining the smallest blocks called glucose into larger, more complex blocks, units, chains of starch. And when it is more branched, it takes even longer to digest. And when you talk about complex starches, it means that there are such long chains and branched so that they take longer to digest. So you have seen, we are still looking at the story of carbohydrates. We are still creating this story of carbohydrates. So from what you have just seen in the previous slide, you see that our carbohydrate food actually comes from the environment. Our carbohydrate, the elements or the molecules that make our carbohydrate food, they actually come from the environment. And it's only the plants which have the capacity to combine such molecules from the environment, from the soil, and from the water, and from the air, and from there they make a carbohydrate, a starch that I can eat and say it is my food. So our carbohydrate food comes from the environment, from carbon dioxide in the air and water from the soil. This chemical work is done by special cells in the plant leaves. Only the plants are able to perform this kind of chemical work. This is a chemical work of manufacturing food for me, which is called a starch, which is called a carbohydrate. The human body cells cannot combine the two. So what are we saying? If the human cells cannot combine these two portions which make the carbohydrate, it means that without plants to make food for me and you, we cannot survive. We cannot survive. And that is why plants are so important for us as the primary manufacturers for our food. And the plant is therefore, these plant foods are therefore our primary food manufacturer. They are our primary food manufacturer. We are still looking at the story of carbohydrates. We are unraveling it out to see what does it hold for us. In modern times, we have said that scientists have now shown that people should eat foods directly from the plants. You can see that plants are very special for human beings and for animals. Animals have got a special mechanism that combines molecules from the air and from the water in the soil and make for me food that I can eat, which can go and benefit my cells. And from the incredible research that has been going on for years, scientists have now shown us that people should eat foods directly from plants. Science of our body cells agree with the science that make our food. This is a very incredible statement, because the science of our body cells agree with plant science that make our food. You see, plants manufacture food for us. And scientists have said that food that is manufactured by the plants is good for our cells because it goes and it complements with the cell, with the work of the cells. The food that we eat from the plants does not go to fight our cells. It goes and enhances the health of the cells, the health of our body, the wellness of our body, and also the cell does not reject it. The cell uses it to build the body muscle, to provide energy, and to provide other structures. And when we miss this specification, that our body cells agree with the science of the plants that make our food, and in our feeding, we violate this rule. We violate this law. It means that wellness will be greatly compromised. Our wellness will be greatly compromised, especially as in eating too much refined carbohydrates. Eating too much refined carbohydrates really messes around with our wellness. We are still going on with the story of the carbohydrates, which is the story of our food. We have seen that in this part of the world, in Africa and in our country, that carbohydrate plays a very, very important role towards our wellness. And we can no longer ignore our carbohydrates. And here I'm saying thank you very much for your participation. Thank you for your participation in the story of our carbohydrates as it influences wellness in our bodies. This story may help us enter into a praise of carbohydrate metabolism that leads to wellness. I trust that this section has been helpful. Developing a healthy carbohydrate culture is an important step in one's journey to wellness. I wish you all the best in your journey to wellness. This story has been created by Eating Cellular Wellness Solutions.